Da, da, da. It's the first Friday of the month, which means that it's time for Fishtrap Fireside. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mike Midlo. I'm the program director here at Fishtrap. Fireside is a monthly series we've been doing for 8 years now to give Wallowa County writers a chance to read and share their work. It's been a blast. Since 2013, I think that more than 90 local Wallowa County writers have stepped up to the podium to do just that. And this month is going to be fun. We've got some longtime Fishtrap friends, Benjamin Curry, Kathy Hunter, and Moll McCarty. And for those of you who maybe this is the first time you've experienced Fishtrap Fireside, or maybe you've never heard of Fishtrap, we're a literary arts and humanities organization in Wallowa County in the northeast corner of Oregon, the homeland of the Nimiipuu, the Nez Perce people. And our office is located in this beautiful historic home in Enterprise, Oregon. Normally, when the world was a little different than it has been lately, this place would be filled with people coming to hear their friends and neighbors share their work. But now it's just me and all of us around the world. And that's kind of a cool opportunity because now people from all over the place can see what Fishtrap Fireside is all about and see what people are writing here in Wallowa County. Hopefully we'll all be able to get together again soon, but that's what we're doing now. And if there's any indication, there's been a lot of interest and it's filled a need. It certainly has for me. I also want to thank our local bookstore, the Bookloft, for sponsoring November's Fishtrap Fireside. It's one of those bookstores you think about from your childhood. It's one of those little places where you go and has all these great titles and friendly people to help you find just the book that you want. And then you can get a cup of coffee or a cookie and see some local art from folks. It's thanks Bookloft for sponsoring this. So let's get going. Here's how Fishtrap Fireside works. Each month we invite 3 local writers to share their work. They get up to 10 minutes to do whatever they want to do. So pour yourself a cup of something, throw a log on the fire, sit back and enjoy tonight's program. Let's get going with our first reader. Raised in Wallowa County's rugged North End, Benjamin Curry's claim to fame is he closed the Flora School all by himself. He was the last kid to graduate from the school. A fan of birdsong, huckleberries, and freeheel skiing, Benjamin tunes his senses for all 3 from his home in Joseph. In his spare time, he writes poetry, memoir, and data center strategy documents. Hey, Benjamin, I haven't seen you for a long time. How's life in Joseph?
Life is good. It's still busy. Our kids are actually attending school in face-to-face, so we feel fortunate for that. I've been reading memoir for the past few times I've done firesides, but I'm going back to poetry this time. All of these poems have come out of me over this summer. So I hope I've invited a bunch of friends to watch. So hopefully you all enjoy these poems and we'll get going. First one is called The Woodcutters. A returning dream, real as breath, as pulse, familiar as touch of finger to thumb. A distant crack of axe cleaving tamarack round, the cold forest sheening in its blade. I peer hard backward through time's icy fog, and their reflections form crystalline, fragile, but yes, I can see them. A smattering of men in a loose circle around a bonfire, warming their bodies one side at a time while the winter gnaws at the other. Not a jolly gathering, no, but necessary. A collective of work in those lost acres of the 20th century, getting the wood in. And they took what joy they could in being together, the union of labor, the communion of community readying itself for the perpetual long winter, the whine of chainsaw, the rumble of pickup engine, the rattle of tire chains as they dig into a mud-frozen, rutted road. And the muttering and laughter on lunch break beside the fire, tall tales and taller truths. I can't hear them speak, of course. this is a dream after all, and who lets themselves have everything? But as I wake, the thought returns for the 1000th time. If not for the year of my birth, too late, those forms freezing in the middle of the day could be me. And would have I been happy? Would I have enjoyed that cold blaze beneath the pines? The assembled trash wood, limbs, knots, fragments of bark, burning to warm me so that we could keep working? No answer to that. Not the point, really. The point being this. You, O voiceless shadows of community past, I remember you and the work you did so that all our families could survive. Early morning, mid-July 2020. The sober hour before the pad of my daughter's feet on the stairs, before the clack and clank of breakfast dishes, the sun pours into my living room like coffee, warm and wakening. Before the TV comes on and the pundits blare to tell me what to think, and the juiced up guys and gals appear with their auto juice-o-matic phone to tell me what to buy to make my life complete. I sit in the quiet before words and think, my own thoughts perhaps, my own memories perhaps, washing up from the semi-conscious sea before I've drunk from the commercial world, the world of work, of news, of the 150,000 dead in my country from virus and ineptitude, arrogance and greed. I sit in the quiet beside my thoughts and memories and sorrows and anger to turn them into what? By the end of today, I will have drunk the liquor of daily habits, bad and good, and be inured to the suffering of others, inured to the now 160,000 dead by 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. By the end of the day, I will need my gin and tonic to take that edge off, to anesthetize my disbelief at talking heads and people who lie for a living, dressed in fitted suits or silk blouses with slacks. Appearance matters more than truth, who think they can sell me bottled air to breathe. But to this quiet summer hour I return, thinking of cold plums and of notes of apology left long decades ago on a kitchen table in New Jersey by another poet and a doctor who loved his wife. Nabokov leaves St. Petersburg, 1919. Bullets ricochet from the streets, the dying sing, run, but keep writing. Taking root. We fleshed the white-tailed deer. None of us got a shot at it, so fast it dashed, the sunset sang. And felled its forest, again so fast the memory barely returns from the lost quadrants of sleep. And we built the fences, split rail replaced by barbed wire in the blink of an eye, to mark our petty sections of the world we claimed. Then the 4 square houses, stolid and somehow comforting in their tamed yards and gardens, amorphously better, yes, than the wild and its incessant panorama that we knew in our bones to fear. And the last quadrant of marsh, where once the tadpole swam and its parent frog riveted till the great blue herons stalked the shallows. Over it we laid our pavement like unbridled excrement, and we wonder why our neighborhood floods. We argued our way into suburban cul-de-sacs and parking lots like cancer that spread over what our grandparents loved and would never now recognize. Argued our way into radioactive ports that glow in the night, incendiary as the signal beacons of Agamemnon's return from Troy. Argued our way into cities, their traffic revisions and lost acres, where once the Stellar's jay squawked at us to share cold lunches beside a bonfire. And those birds, finch and crossbill, robin and chickadee, they flit in submission, songs drowned by the hiss of tires on asphalt. And still, and still, and still, I see the tree root crack the sidewalk as I walk to work and think the earth can heal our breaking. Let me get out of its way. Fever dream. A strong poison pours into my veins. Wrath, fear, acrimony, blame, different names for the same venom. I sleepless tear the blankets from my bed, their bitter taste on the back of my tongue, and they arrive, and the jowled faces of conspiracy, the half-dead smiles of the talking heads I have come to loathe, swim toward me out of the dark. What antidote have I to such toxins? I beg for water, or even better, bourbon, both a poor substitute for forgiveness. And the last poem I'll read is just titled Poem. Where fell the herders, the old men who wore suspenders over their long johns, who worshiped their hissing kerosene lamps? Older they were than my father, who was then old as pine, as they listed slightly forward from their hips, victims of one too many falls from the back of their favorite mule. And they spat snooze juice on the blonde October grass and spotted liars by the way they buttoned their shirts. Christ almighty, that sumbitch is full of itself as coyote as a piss. Oh, that sweet stale scent of veer on their breaths, early and always, and in the summers disappeared themselves to work their mountain heavens running sheep. Where fell they? I went to find them to ask in these early hours before the stars dim, what in the Sam Hill is going on in our country? For I know they would tell me straight in a heartbeat. On their houses, though, a pox of shame at poverty and at falling into a bender again after payday. Where fell they? One drowned face down drunk in an irrigation ditch, an inch of standing water over his nose. One hung himself from the rafters of a wintering shack Dad set up on the back 40. Others went to sleep in their rented rooms above a bar on Burnside Avenue, Portland, Oregon, USA, and never woke up. Long have they been gone, but some nights I hear their voices on the ghost winds that spill down from those mountain heavens. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed those.
Oh, Benjamin, good to hear your stories again. I haven't heard your poetry for a long time. You take me places. Give it up for Benjamin Curry. It's great to have him back at Fishtrap Fireside. Thank you for doing that. Before we get to our next reader, I want to tell you a little bit about some of the writing workshops that Fishtrap is hosting this fall. We've got to reinvent things a little bit since sitting around the table over here, and now people from anywhere and everywhere can join a virtual workshop. Our next one begins next week, Tuesday, November 10, with Fishtrap's longtime friend, Holly Hughes. She is teaching a 4-week workshop entitled Turning to Poetry in Hard Times. She's worked hard on this, and I think it's going for those of you who would like to think about that. We're all going through hard times. What poetry can inform and help and do things. I do the same thing. You can learn about that at fishtrap.org and save your spot. And also, we're doing a 1-day Saturday workshop with Karen Ovanen, who just taught a workshop recently on Saturday, December 12, called Writing a Memoir That Reads Like a Novel. How to take your reader along for the ride. Karen is a new face in the Fishtrap community, but I am really excited about what Karen is doing as an educator and a teacher. So check that out and save your spot at fishtrap.org. Plus, very soon, we've been working so hard on this. We're going to announce the 2021 Summer Fishtrap lineup of workshops and instructors. You're going to be impressed, I think. Plus Winter Fishtrap and the Big Read. Keep an eye out for all of that very soon, maybe as soon as next week. So let's continue on with our second reader, who has been a part of Fishtrap for decades and been such an important part of it. Kathy Hunter is a retired journalist, teacher, and editor with family roots here in Wallowa County. After years in Alaska, she came back here and was embraced by Fishtrap, she says, where she served many years on the board and acted as a den mom at writers' retreats. She evolved over time, as she says, into a performing storyteller. She produced a radio show some time ago called Fishtrap Storytime on our local radio station, KWVR, and recorded and released CDs of her own original tales. Kathy says she survived the pandemic with an unusual hobby for her, ceramics. In ceramics, she is creating joyful dogs racing in go-karts. Picture that. Two of them can be seen at the Josephi Center for Arts and Cultures exhibit, Hello from the Lockdown. Kathy, I have to ask you, tell me a little bit about dogs and go-karts.
I was visiting a friend in Tri-Cities, and on the poster, on the wall was a poster of dogs on a carnival ride, like maybe, I don't know what it was, but they were in a cart and their arms were in the air and they were just having a high old time. And that's what started me on this. I don't know how that happened. And I don't understand how I do what I do, but I do.
Oh, that's the story of artists. Well, would you read something for us?
I would love to.
Thanks.
Thank you. The season for sitting around the fire telling stories is here again. For all those years in Alaska, I heard tales of Arctic bravery, nick of time rescues from icy water, and heart-stopping bear encounters. Lacking my own story, I sometimes told one about somebody else. But it seems, as I recollect, I do have one of my own. In Palmer one day, the neighbor's adorable baby goats were missing. Tiny twins, Pierre and Monique, one dark and one cream-colored, with markings that looked Egyptian somehow. They followed the neighbor's youngsters about their yard, a happy tangle of children, chickens, goats, and dogs. They still needed to nurse. Through the trees, I could now hear the anxious bleat of their mother, Madame. Had stray dogs ravaged those babies? Had they fallen into the angry Matanuska River far below and been washed away? All night I worried, having combed the area nearby and having found no tracks, no nothing to explain their absence. Where had they gone? The next morning, Pierre returned. He was exhausted and hungry, but unhurt. He was jumpy. Something had frightened him, they thought. But where was Monique? Determination and good hearing had helped me in cases like this in the past. I did remember how the dogs went down to the river in fall to bring back stinky spawned salmon, and how the goats followed the dogs. It was worth a try. I was comfortable that day in jeans and a t-shirt. As I passed their house, I saw the neighbor's car was gone. With a last look at Madame and the sleeping Pierre, I started down the forested trail to the river. Fireweed fluff was blowing, foreshadowing the snow to come, and I smelled ripening high bush cranberries. Soon a tentative eep told me Mrs. Van Gogh was coming too. Mrs. Van Gogh was a stray cat we found living out of a dumpster by a high school in Fairbanks. As testimony to her battle with past winters, she was missing part of an ear and the end of her tail. Aside from a tendency to climb very high when scared and a resistance to being held, the only legacy of her ordeal was a love of fast food scraps, especially fast food fries. Ahead of us, the trail angled down steeply, and although I stopped to call and listen often, I heard only Go's eep faintly behind me. If I waited for her to catch up, she would only come a distance from me or climb a tree. But when I began to walk again, almost immediately she started eeping. Once down to the riverbed, I walked the sandy, rocky trail a quarter mile or so, with the milky Matanuska roaring to my left. Along the base of the forested cliff, I listened and called, "Monique, where are you?" But I only heard Go somewhere behind me. Eep! After an hour of this, I was discouraged. Maybe I should give up, I thought. The goat must be dead, or she would have come home. Something must have killed her, or she died of starvation, being the smaller of the two. Then I heard a tiny sound. It was the only sound that wasn't me, or the wind, or the river, or the cat, and it was very faint. I walked in that direction through the willow scrub. The sound was so tiny and intermittent, I couldn't hear it when I was walking or breathing loudly, so I had to stop often, hold my breath, and listen until I heard it again. Often I waited a long time until the sound was repeated. Once I thought it was up the steep cliff, so I began to weave my way up through tangled alders. Then I thought I heard it back toward the river and came sliding back down. Whenever I stopped to call and listen, I had to wait for Go to catch up, impatient because until she did, she made a louder noise. Gradually, I got closer to the sound. A strange note, almost like the tone Hawaiians blow on a conch shell. Nothing I'd ever heard before, but maybe the cry of a small goat if it was hurt or dry-throated from lack of milk. There it was again, over to my right and up the cliff through Devil's Club, nettles, and dense brush. I tried to hold the sound in my memory to move in the right direction. Crossing a mudslide, to my excitement, I found tiny goat tracks among those of the dogs. She had to be here. Stuck on a ledge maybe, or injured by a fall. "Here I am, Monique, answer me." There was only the faint voice of Go as she searched for me through the jungle behind. I waited for the next note. It must be all Monique can do to make a sound, I thought. Maybe she had to save her strength. I stroked Go as she caught up and greeted me, purring and rolling in the dusty leaves. I was unprepared for how close the next cry was and how loud, just up that steep hillside, through those alders and over a log. "I'm coming, Monique." My feet sought purchase on the steep ground. I grabbed branches and roots to pull me up. The log ahead, a decaying spruce, was a foot around with one end up balanced against a living tree. Monique had to be on the other side. Flailing my way through the brush to the small end, I pulled myself up on my stomach, then stood and walked up the tree, calling out encouragement while peering into the shadows for a spot of white goat hair, a tiny hoof, the movement of an ear. What happened next took only seconds. I sat down on the log, Go jumped up beside me, and bang! A huge dark shape fell from the sky and hit her. Go fell growling and spitting into the brush below. I looked up incredulous. Not 4 feet from me, a huge gray owl sat on top of a snag and blinked. And I knew it wanted my cat for supper. I yelled and cussed and waved my arms, but it didn't leave until I threw a chunk of bark that bounced off its perch. Under the log, Go hissed and spat from the darkness of a crevice. She was not coming out until she felt safe again. That might be spring. I lay on my stomach in the nettles and tried to talk her out. Was she hurt? Meanwhile, the cry sounded again, but I could no longer see the owl. Eventually, I reached a paw and dragged the resisting cat from her cave, like pulling an open umbrella out backwards, and to ascertain that the owl hadn't managed to puncture her skin. Go twisted and clawed at me in an effort to regain her sanctuary, and I could see that the trip home would be unavoidably interesting. If I left Go in her hiding place, she might be able to find her way home later, but the owl would be waiting. If she stayed there until dark, the odds were even better for the owl. I took off my t-shirt, and while she growled in protest, wrapped her in it. Now all I wanted was to go home, dirty, sweaty, scratched, and goatless. I turned to descend the cliff to the river trail, but found it impossible with an armload of squirming cat. I had no arms free to grab branches, and footing was too precarious otherwise. There was nothing to do but go up the cliff through the jungle to eventually reach the pasture on the plateau above. Turning back was not an option, and neither was abandoning my furry friend. I climbed a gully so steep, I was actually glad for a devil's club stalk to grab, while I tried to hold the cat still with my chin. Ungratefully, Go kept growling at this injustice. Now and then a paw found its way out of a sleeve hole and raked me. When her head found its way through, she bit me. A small plane flew over as I labored for a foothold. Can they see me down here in my underwear, I wondered? If I lose my footing, fall and break something, will anyone know where to find me? Hours seemed to pass. When I finally clawed my way over the cliff top onto the grass, it was like the movie had ended. Normal life returned. A passing car threw dust across the field. Beyond the field was my house, where people were probably not even wondering yet how soon I would start dinner. I let go out of the shirt and lay there a while. My knees were scratched and bruised. I had welts from the nettles. My hands, arms, ankles, and legs were full of burning stickers. She shook herself, rolled on the ground, and forgave me completely. Then I put on my briar-filled, clawed, and torn shirt back on and limped home, with Go resuming the familiar eep as she trotted behind me. It turned out that Monique had returned early that morning, and while I was scaling the cliff, the family had been taking her to a new home before she could get lost again. It is a relief to join the storytellers with Alaskan Adventures, those who faced untamed nature and survived. More than receiving oil dividends and having toughed out 23 winters, it makes me feel I was a bona fide resident of the state. So I tell the tale of the killer owl at every opportunity. But as I tell it, I find my sympathies are changing. The rabbit cycles go up and down, and that year it must have been a hard life for an owl. How happy that owl must have been, and how relieved to encounter this generous human who called to it so invitingly and chased it all around the hillside, towing lunch.
Woo, woo, woo. Thanks, Kathy. That was wonderful. Appreciate it. If you folks would like to share the stories you hear on Fishtrap Fireside with somebody you know, that's easy. We'll have the full event, the full reading on our website and Fishtrap's YouTube page, and also on Facebook and other social media that we have. You should check it out. They'll be able to watch it any old time. And if you think this event enriched your life a little bit during this time, think about becoming a fish trapper. What is being a fish trapper? Well, it's just about being a part of this whole community that we have here. For as little as $5 a month, you can get a Fish Trap bumper sticker. That's cool. Fish Trap journal, write your hopes and dreams. It's grocery list in there. Discounts to events and workshops, and just the great feeling that comes with supporting an organization that you like so much. One last thing I want to talk about before we get to our next reader. We've partnered with some local folks to create a zine, Circle of Seasons. It's a quarterly zine where people submit poems, essays, thoughts, recipes, drawings, all sorts of collages, all sorts of different stuff. You are welcome to submit your work to it. The deadline for the winter issue is November 15, and you can learn all about Circle of Seasons at fishtrap.org. So I want to introduce our last reader. When I first contacted Moll, I just love having Moll read. Is one of our favorite people in the last few years who's kind of grown up and come to and taken a lot of workshops and was a scholarship recipient to Summer Fishtrap this year. And Moll said, "Oh, Mike, I'm moving out of Wallowa County." And I'm like, man, Summer or Fishtrap Fireside is for Wallowa County readers. But I thought, oh, what the heck, it'd be a great goodbye. So I want to help introduce one of our favorites. Moll McCarty lived in Wallowa County for 9 years, had just moved to Southeast Arizona this fall. Maybe they'll tell us a little bit about it. They're interested in writing poetry and essays that disrupt the gender binary and delineate experiences of so-called mental illness. Moll has recently been exploring the topic of whiteness and radicalization in their submissions to Fishtrap's Circle of Seasons zine. Fishtrap has been deeply informative in Moll's development as a writer, and they are so grateful for this opportunity to read for this season of Fireside. Moll, how's sunny Arizona?
Oh, it's so warm here, but I miss you all in Wallowa County so much.
Oh, great. Hey, looking forward to having you read and hearing your voice, not only your physical voice, but your voice. So please read something for us.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. This first poem is sort of a devotion. I've been reading an essay by a woman named Clementine Morgan about Mary, the Virgin Mary, as a queer sort of figure of devotion. So this is to Mary. There's a little prayer station right by my apartment. So that's what this poem is about. It's called Queer Mary. Alarming. A small stucco house for her with thin black bars on the front and inside, flowers, gifts, well-tended, recent. Who has been here before me on the side of the highway to pray? I kneel and commune with her until a man rounds the corner in a shiny black SUV. I assume it's a man by the way he leans into the gas and bolt upward, still as a cactus, then out of habit, toss a look over my shoulder at him, a throwback to teenagehood, where I practiced flirting as if it were a kind of prayer, a supplication to men in general, for my needs in general to be fulfilled. Give me your love and I will give you the performance of a self. I will shape myself into whatever you want me to be. But what if a self can spring up through the middle of its own yearning, shucking the performance off like a dried husk, growing into the shape of its own desire? A cactus curls around itself, pushing yellow fruit out of its inner liquid. Stop adjusting the slots of your yearning, Mary whispers, her voice bedroomy. What reels up like a fountain within me is unedited. Then I am walking down the highway again, in the unedited shape of my desire. So this next poem that I'm gonna read, I wrote at Summer Fishtrap. I got a scholarship this year, as Mike said, and it was amazing. It was one of the most formative experiences of my life. Completely recommend it. I took Frank X. Walker's persona poetry class, and he had us write a poem from the perspective of like something kind of immovable and objective. So I chose to write a poem from the perspective of time. And that turned into a letter from time to me about turning 40, which I did this summer. And as I was writing this poem, I was thinking and reading a lot about whiteness and trying to kind of feel into how to put that into words. So this poem appeared in the Circle of Seasons zine this fall, and I have added a little bit to it. So it's called Letter from Time on my 40th birthday. I stand still while you rush through me, or on unbearable days, beg me to quicken through you. You weep at night for the children you thought would stay children. You yourself are still a child. You don't look 40, a friend says on your 40th birthday, which is meant as a compliment. The tea kettle startles you back into the kitchen of your skin. When you pour hot water over nettle leaves, they unwrinkle themselves in glee. You examine your face in the water for signs of age, and instead see signs of race. You are not accustomed to seeing yourself as having race, because you belong to the default race. The default that is enforced violently. Whiteness is a construction. It is real because its narrative has been forced into history. Race confers no biological difference beyond its physical cues. There are no genetic racial differences. My pink body, which we will call a white body, is not more unruly or less dangerous than the bodies white bodies police. Outside, the air is sharp. Your tea cools, your skin cools, your white skin that will wrinkle and die. You plummet toward death, who doesn't? Don't say death, you chasten me, but I never stop speaking of death. Forward is how you move through me, forward toward death. What kind of death can a white body contemplate? I do not fear being shot on a routine traffic stop or in my home by law enforcement. I will not die a poverty-related death. Good night, you say to the mountains, whose lack of response sends a jolt of self-consciousness through the fascia under your skin. The past exists. It cannot be unmade or refashioned. The future is undeveloped. It does not exist until it blooms obscenely, then disappears. What kind of future could Black and brown bodies thrive inside? A leaf crackles underfoot, then the porch swing moves with your fresh weight. When a white body swings in a poem, no one thinks of trees or bodies swinging from them. What was death called by the people your people erased? The mountains continue their silence. You take a sip of tea and wrap yourself in wool. I stand still while the moon moves, while the soil moves, while your thoughts move. I stand still while your white body swings into an awareness of race. And this last poem that I'll read, so I moved to Southeast Arizona and I miss everyone in Wallowa County so much. I live about a mile from the Mexican border and I can see the wall from my apartment. Not very well, just barely. I can just see this little line during the day and at night you can see the lights. So this is a poem about the wall. And the two towns that I have been to now that are on the wall is a town called Douglas on the American side and a town called Agua Prieta on the Mexican side. So they'll appear in this poem too. A boundary, a division, a line, a caesura, a cut. What is that line, I wonder at first? I think it's a railroad track. It goes on and on and on. At night, there are perfectly symmetrical lights where the line is. Too symmetrical to be stars, arbitrary boundary, the edge of an economic class. I tried to imagine the wall being toppled like a Civil War monument, hands pulling it down with ropes. In Douglas, the wall is painted beige. A quiet neighborhood faces this blight. On one side of the street are houses. On the other side, the beige wall. Between them runs a deep ditch. What would it take to climb? Rope, a human anchor, another human anchor inside the ditch. Both walls tip toward the climber, away from one another. Razor wire in between. In Agua Prieta, the wall is painted, yellow, pink, blue, green, red. Sometimes there are murals, benches, bus stops, sidewalks, vendors selling masks. Colored metal strips jut skyward, slat after painted slat. industrial lights and cameras. It cuts the land, cuts the people, cuts the feet, running through the quiet Douglas neighborhood with feet bleeding, running where? The hospital is for American feet. And that's all the poems I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for listening to me read, and Mike for letting me read even though I don't live there anymore.
Oh, Moll, thank you so much. And I wanted to thank Moll McCarty, Benjamin Curry, and Kathy Hunter. You know, folks, it takes a lot to sit in front of a computer and read your work. And also, you know, most of us have not been in a crowd. So ready? Let's all give them a big round of applause. Do it in your own living room. It'll make you feel better. Ready? Go. Yay! Yeah. It's great to hear Moll talk about how Fishtrap Scholarship really inspired the work that they are doing. Right now, we are accepting applications for summer Fishtrap scholarships and fellowships. So you should go to fishtrap.org and take a look at it. We're accepting applications right now through December 15, 2020 for next summer's Summer Fishtrap. So I also want to thank again the Bookloft for sponsoring November's Fishtrap Fireside, and every single one of you folks who pull out your checkbook and write a check to Fishtrap every year. It makes a huge difference, and we really appreciate it. You can always learn more at fishtrap.org. The next Fishtrap Fireside is Friday, December 4th. It's going to be a doozy, folks. Circle it on your calendar. Al Bell is going to read stories, I think, about his time as a prison guard at San Quentin. Christina de Villiers, who is a talented poet, and Kelly Sheehy, who never disappoints. So please tune in again. And you can always get a hold of us at Fishtrap, info@fishtrap.org. And thanks for taking the time to watch this and for being a part of it. Hope to see you next month. Good night.